The twin suns of Vereen Prime burned bright above the alien marketplace. The air shimmered with heat and noise. Strange smells mixed together. Sweet fruits, burning oils, and the metallic scent of machines. Creatures from 100 worlds shouted and traded. Among them moved a young alien boy named Chiron, his silver skin catching the light. He carried a small credit pouch and a secret smile. Today was his sister's birthday. Lyra had wanted a pet for many cycles. Not just any pet, but something special, something alive and rare. Their family was not rich, but Chiron had saved for months doing small repair jobs and trading scrap parts. He wanted to give her a surprise she would never forget. He passed by stalls filled with glittering creatures, winged birds made of light, tiny sand crawlers with gemstone shells, soft beasts that purred when touched. But none of them felt right. They were all too common, too lifeless. Lyra loved things that were different, things that had a story. As Chiron walked deeper into the market, the noise faded. A shadowed corner waited at the end of a narrow path. Here the air was colder. A rough-looking trader stood behind a curtain of smoke, whispering to two armored guards. Chiron's curiosity drew him closer. He heard a single word that stopped his heart. Human. He froze. Humans were stories told in history lessons, creatures of war and fire. Long ago they had fought against half the galaxy and vanished afterward. No one had ever seen one alive. The trader noticed Chiron's stare and gave a crooked grin. "You look interested, young one. Looking for something rare?" Chiron nodded slowly. "You said a human?" The trader lowered his voice. "A real one. Captured from the ruins of an old Earth colony. Strong, smart, and still alive. But not for display. Dangerous, illegal." Chiron's pulse quickened. Dangerous meant exciting. Illegal meant special. He stepped closer, pretending confidence. "Show me." The trader looked around and pulled aside a curtain. Behind it stood a glass cage glowing with faint blue light. Inside sat a figure, tall, broad-shouldered, covered in simple, torn clothing. His hair was dark, his eyes sharp and steady. He didn't look like a beast or monster. He looked calm, almost human in the softest way possible. The human raised his head and met Chiron's gaze. No fear, no begging, just quiet strength. For a moment, Chiron forgot to breathe. "He understands you," the trader said quietly. "They say humans can learn any tongue fast. This one already speaks 3. Chiron whispered, "What's his name?" The trader shrugged. "He won't tell. Calls himself Eli." Eli stood slowly, his movements smooth and confident. He looked at Chiron through the glass, then spoke in perfect alien speech. "You shouldn't be here, child." The voice was deep and calm, not angry, not cruel. Chiron stepped back, his heart pounding. The trader laughed. "See, he talks like one of us. But don't be fooled. He's a predator. Once his kind ruled through war. But Chiron saw something else. Not a predator, not a weapon, a person. Someone trapped. How much?" he asked. The trader's smile faded. "You can't buy him. He's not supposed to be here. I'll be moving him tonight before the patrol comes." Chiron opened his pouch and showed the glowing credits. "I'll pay double." The trader studied him for a long time. "You're serious?" "Yes, I want him." The trader sighed, looking around again. "Fine, but you never saw me." "You never speak of this. If the council finds out, we both vanish." Chiron nodded quickly. Agreed, the deal was made. The trader pressed a code into a small transport pod and handed it over. Inside the glass pod, Eli remained silent, watching as if trying to understand Chiron's decision. Chiron whispered, "I'm not going to hurt you. You'll be safe." Eli tilted his head slightly, his eyes calm but unreadable. "No one who buys another being can call it safety," he said softly. Chiron didn't answer. The words stayed in his chest like a weight. He guided the pod through the alleys, keeping to the shadows. The streets above hummed with patrol drones. The glow of the twin suns began to fade into the deep purple of evening. Chiron's small transport hovered to the family home, hidden behind old repair shops. He placed the pod in Lyra's room before she returned. His hands shook with excitement and fear. When she opened the door later, the first thing she saw was the tall figure behind the glass. Her eyes went wide. "Karen, what is that?" Chiron smiled nervously. "Happy birthday, sister. You said you wanted a pet. I got you something better." Lyra stepped closer, her skin turning pale blue with shock. "That's not a pet. That's a human. Are you insane? We could be arrested for this." Eli stood still inside the pod, his eyes focused on her. "I mean no harm," he said gently. Lyra gasped. He speaks our language, Chiron nodded. He's different. He's not an animal, Lyra, he's alive like us. She turned toward him, anger and fear mixing in her voice. You don't understand what you've done. But before she could continue, a sharp sound echoed outside, the deep thrum of patrol ships passing over the district. Chiron's heart raced. He quickly dimmed the lights and covered the pod. Outside, voices shouted orders. Search teams were moving closer. Lyra looked at her brother in panic. What have you brought into our home? Chiron whispered back. Something amazing. Or something that could destroy us. The wall shook as the patrol passed. Eli's calm eyes stayed fixed on them both, unblinking. The air was thick with fear and mystery. Lyra pressed her hand over her mouth. Chiron stood frozen, and inside the dim light of the room the human waited, silent, powerful, and watching. The gift was no longer just unusual. It was alive, forbidden, and full of secrets, and it had only just begun to change their world. Lyra stood frozen in front of the glass pod, her mind refusing to accept what her eyes saw. The human stood tall inside the transparent shell, quiet, his hands resting calmly at his sides. He didn't snarl or shout. He just watched her, his dark eyes full of something she couldn't name. Chiron's voice broke the silence. He's not dangerous. I promise, Lyra turned to him, her voice trembling. You bought a human, Chiron. Do you even understand what that means? He tried to smile, but it looked weak. You said you wanted a pet that was special. Something no one else has. Well, no one else in this world has this. Lyra's throat went dry. She looked at the figure again. The stories she grew up hearing came rushing back. Humans who turned whole planets into ash, who built machines that swallowed stars, who vanished after a final war. She stepped closer, unable to stop herself. The human spoke softly, his voice steady. My name is Eli. Hearing him speak her language so clearly made Lyra stumble backward. His tone wasn't wild or angry. It was calm, almost gentle. She felt her heart beating faster. You shouldn't be here, she whispered. You're supposed to be extinct. Eli looked down, a faint smile touching his face. So I've been told. Chiron stepped between them, nervous but excited. He talks like us, thinks like us. You have to admit it's amazing. Lyra's fear turned into frustration. Amazing? It's illegal. The council forbids any contact with ancient species. If anyone finds out he's here, we're finished. But Chiron wasn't listening. He stared at Eli like a child seeing a star up close for the first time. He doesn't look like a killer. Maybe the stories were wrong. Lyra wanted to argue, but a part of her was curious too. She pressed the control panel, and the glass faded open with a quiet hiss. Eli didn't move. He stood still, hands raised slightly to show peace. Why didn't you try to escape? Lyra asked, her voice cautious. Eli met her gaze. Escape to where? Every sky here is not mine. His words carried a strange sadness. Lyra felt it settle in the room like cold air. For a moment, she forgot the danger. She saw a person, not a legend. Chiron handed him a flask of water. Eli took it and drank slowly, careful not to spill. He handed it back with a quiet, thank you. Lyra crossed her arms. You're human. You fought wars that nearly destroyed the stars. Why are you so calm? Eli's eyes darkened. Because fear is a cage, and I've lived in one for too long. The answer silenced her. There was strength in his voice, but also something broken. Chiron looked between them, unsure what to say. We'll hide him, he whispered. Just until we figure something out. Lyra shook her head. You don't hide something like this. The patrols are already searching. They'll scan every home. Right then, a loud knock echoed through the walls. Both siblings froze. A second knock followed, sharper this time. Lyra's skin turned pale. That's them. Eli didn't move. His calm gaze shifted toward the door. If they find me, they'll kill you too. Chiron whispered quickly. Downstairs, the storage room. Go now. Lyra hesitated, torn between fear and instinct. Eli gave a small nod and moved toward the hidden passage. Even his footsteps were quiet, controlled. Chiron sealed the door just as the main gate alarm chimed. The patrol's shadow fell across the window. Two armored officers stood outside, their scanners humming softly. Lyra forced a smile and opened the door. Good evening, officers. Can we help you? One of them scanned her face, then the room. We're tracking an illegal life signal. Possibly a human. Have you seen or heard anything unusual? Lyra shook her head quickly. No, just preparing for my brother's birthday celebration. The officer's eyes narrowed. Mind if we scan the property? Chiron stepped forward bravely. Of course, sir. We have nothing to hide. The officers entered, their scanners sweeping across the floor. Every beep made Lyra's heart pound harder. She kept glancing toward the floor where the hidden passage led to the basement. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, one officer frowned. Signal's weak here, but fading. Probably interference, the other shrugged. Move on. The council wants results before dark. When they left, the siblings collapsed against the wall, shaking. Chiron whispered, "That was close." Lyra exhaled slowly, her voice soft. Too close, they hurried to the basement. Eli stood there in the dim light, waiting. "They're gone," Karen said. "You're safe now." Eli looked at them, his expression unreadable. "You've just made yourselves part of my story. There's no turning back now." Lyra didn't know why, but his words sent a chill through her. For the first time she understood this wasn't just a mistake or a strange gift. It was the beginning of something far bigger than both of them. And upstairs, the patrol ship circled once more, its red light sweeping across their home like a warning. The human had arrived, and nothing on Vereen Prime would ever be the same again. The night on Vereen Prime was silent except for the hum of the city's power veins running beneath the streets. In the lower chamber of the house, hidden behind layers of steel and scrap metal, Eli sat quietly on the floor. The faint blue light from an old generator painted his face in shadows. Chiron worked near him, adjusting a small jammer to block any life signal scans. Lyra stood by the door, arms folded, watching both of them with a mix of fear and curiosity. She had barely spoken since the patrol left. Her mind was spinning with questions. Who was this human really? Why had he been captured? And why did she feel that strange pull whenever he looked at her? Like he carried something ancient and powerful behind his calm eyes. Chiron broke the silence. "The jammer should hide your signal for a while. It's not perfect, but it might keep the patrols from finding you again." Eli nodded slowly. "Thank you." His voice was low and steady, and even though his words were simple, they carried weight. Lyra found herself staring at him again. There was something different about the way he spoke. Every sentence felt thoughtful, measured, almost like music that had been forgotten. Chiron sat beside him, eager to talk. "Were humans really as strong as the stories say?" Eli's lips curved slightly. "Strength isn't what destroyed us. Pride did. We built machines that could think for us, fight for us, even feel for us. In the end, we forgot how to be human." Lyra frowned. "And now you want to bring that back?" He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "No, I want to survive." Her heart skipped once. There was no arrogance in his tone, only truth. She turned away, pretending to check the security feed. "Well, you won't survive long if anyone finds you here." Chiron smiled lightly. "Don't listen to her. She says that about everyone." Lyra glared at him, but Eli chuckled softly, and the sound was warm enough to fill the small room. For a brief moment, the tension faded. Later that night, while Chiron worked on repairing the pod's damaged systems, Lyra sat across from Eli with a tablet in her hands. "You can read this, right?" she asked, showing him the alien script. He studied it for a moment, then nodded. "It's similar to one of our old trade languages." "I can understand most of it," she blinked. "You learned that in a few hours?" "Humans adapt," he said simply. Lyra leaned back, impressed but unwilling to show it. "Adapt or die, right?" Eli's gaze softened. "Something like that." They fell quiet again. The room buzzed softly with the generator's hum. Lyra realized she didn't feel afraid anymore. Instead, she felt a strange comfort, as if Eli's calm presence made the shadows less heavy. But Chiron's voice soon broke the stillness. "We can't keep him here forever. Someone will notice the power drain. We need a plan." Eli looked up. "You should not risk yourselves for me. If I leave now, they'll lose my signal soon enough." Lyra shook her head. "You don't understand. The council doesn't just lose things. If they think we're hiding you, they'll destroy our home to prove a point." Eli's jaw tightened. "Then I'll make sure they don't find out." Chiron frowned. "You can't go out there alone. The whole sector's on lockdown." Eli said nothing. His eyes flickered with a silent thought. A memory, perhaps, and for the first time Lyra noticed a faint scar running down the side of his neck. It looked like metal had burned him once. She pointed to it. "That scar, what is it?" Eli hesitated before answering. "A mark from the implant they used to track me. It connects to a network. Even now, they might still be following the signal." Lyra's pulse quickened. "Then we're already in danger." Kairon jumped up. I can try to disable it. Eli gave him a firm look. If you fail, the signal will broadcast louder. They'll come straight here. Lyra stepped closer. Then what do we do? Eli's eyes met hers. You decide whether to trust me. The words hung heavy in the air. Lyra stared at him, trying to read the truth behind them. She wanted to believe him, but the risk was too great. Kairon looked between them. Maybe trust is the only thing we have left. Eli's voice softened. Then we make it count. They began to work together. Kairon connected wires. Lyra held the light. And Eli stayed still as they examined the implant signal pattern through the scanner. Sweat beaded on Kairon's forehead. The device pulsed faster, red and sharp. Almost there, Kairon whispered. A high-pitched tone filled the room. The lights flickered. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. Then silence. Eli exhaled slowly. It's done. Kairon smiled with relief. We did it. It's gone, but Eli shook his head. No, it's only sleeping. He looked toward the ceiling as if he could feel something in the air. They'll come soon. Lyra swallowed hard. The realization hit her. There was no way back to normal life now. The human was part of their world, and the world was about to notice. Outside, the patrol drones drifted through the fog, their scanners glowing faint red. In the shadows of Varine Prime, the hunt had already begun. The sun had not yet risen over Varine Prime when the first alarms echoed across the lower districts. A thin red glow spread through the fog as patrol ships swept the sky. Inside the small house, Lyra woke to the low hum of scanners passing overhead. Her heart pounded as she ran to the window and saw the light tracing across rooftops, searching for something or someone. In the basement, Kairon and Eli were already awake. Kairon sat by the terminal, his fingers moving fast across the control pad. They're scanning for biological signals again, he said quietly. We can't stay here. Eli stood beside him, calm but alert. His sharp eyes followed the flicker of lights on the wall. How close are they? Close enough to smell the metal in our walls, Kairon muttered. They're tracing the signal from the implant again. It reactivated on its own. Lyra rushed down the stairs, her voice low. You said you turned it off. Kairon shook his head. It turned itself back on. I think it's designed to reawaken after a few cycles. Eli touched the side of his neck where the faint scar still glowed with a dull red pulse. They found me once. They'll find me again. Lyra's fear turned into anger. You brought this to us. If they catch you, they'll destroy everything we own. Eli looked at her calmly. Then let me leave. But Kairon grabbed his arm. No, they'll shoot you on sight. If you go alone, you're done. We'll find a way to mask your signal again. Lyra turned away, pacing. Her mind raced between choices that all led to disaster. There's no way to hide you forever. The Council's eyes see through walls. We need to run. Eli studied her carefully. You're willing to leave your home for me? She hesitated, her voice barely a whisper. If we stay, we die. Kairon's hands trembled as he shut down the jammer. There's an old tunnel system beneath the Foundry District. The smugglers use it to move stolen tech. If we reach it, we might find a ship to get you off-world. Lyra nodded. Then we go now. Eli moved to help them gather supplies, water packs, old ration bars, and a pulse beacon for light. His movements were smooth, practiced. Even in the dim glow, there was something powerful about him. A quiet strength that made the siblings trust him despite their fear. They slipped out through the back alley as the morning light began to bleed across the sky. Patrol ships roared above, their engines shaking the buildings. The streets were empty except for mechanical guards scanning every doorway. Kairon led the way through the narrow alleys. Lyra stayed close behind, glancing at Eli every few steps. He followed silently, his eyes scanning for danger, his posture calm but ready. As they passed an old warehouse, a loud alarm blared overhead. A drone descended from the sky, its red lens locking onto them. Run, Eli said sharply. They sprinted down the street as the drone fired a pulse beam that scorched the wall beside them. The ground shook. Lyra stumbled, but Eli caught her hand and pulled her up without slowing. They turned into a side tunnel, metal doors slamming behind them. Kairon activated the emergency locks. That'll hold it for a minute. They paused to catch their breath. The air was thick with dust and heat. Lyra looked at Eli, still holding her hand. She pulled it back quickly, unsure why her chest felt so heavy. Why are they after you? She asked. You said humans were gone. Why risk so much for one? Eli looked down at her, his voice quiet. Because I'm not the only one left. They fear what my kind can still become. Chiron frowned. You mean there are others? Eli nodded once. Hidden, scattered, waiting for a chance to rise again. The council doesn't want that. They want control. Before they could speak again, a low rumble shook the tunnel. Metal dust rained from above. The patrol had found them. Eli's voice hardened. Keep moving. They ran deeper into the tunnels. Lights flickered as they passed old pipes and cracked walls. Chiron pulled up a map on his wrist display. There's a cargo lift ahead. It should lead to the industrial zone. But as they reached the lift, the door refused to open. The screen flashed red, locked by the council system. Lyra slammed her hand against the panel. We're trapped. Eli stepped forward and placed his palm against the lock. His eyes glowed faint blue as faint sparks ran along his veins. The system beeped once and the door slid open. Chiron stared. How did you do that? Eli exhaled slowly. Old human tech still speaks to me. They entered the lift and began to ascend. Outside, the sirens grew louder. The sound of ships and scanners filled the air. Lyra looked at Eli again. This strange human who had brought danger into their lives, but also something else. Something she couldn't yet name. As the lift doors opened, the sunlight hit their faces. Smoke rose from the city as patrols spread out across the sky. Chiron gripped his sister's hand. There's no turning back now. Eli looked out toward the horizon, his voice calm. Then we moved forward. Above them, the sound of the hunt grew louder and the chase for the last human truly began. The air outside was thick with smoke and heat. Sirens echoed through the city as the patrols spread across the sky, their scanners casting red light down every street. Chiron, Lyra, and Eli ran through the narrow alleys, their footsteps silent against the metal ground. Each corner they turned could lead them closer to freedom, or straight into a trap. Eli took the lead now. His movements were precise, almost instinctive, as if he could sense where the patrols would go before they appeared. Chiron followed closely, holding the small scanner that mapped the tunnels below. Lyra stayed behind them, her eyes darting from shadow to shadow, her chest tight with fear. They reached the edge of the industrial district, where the air was filled with the hum of massive machines and the distant glow of furnaces. Old pipes lined the walls like veins dripping with steam. This part of the city was half abandoned, used mostly by smugglers and scavengers. Chiron pointed toward a large warehouse covered in rust. There's a hidden passage inside that leads to the smuggler's bay. If we can get there, we might find a ship willing to take us off-world. Eli nodded. Then we moved fast. They slipped inside the warehouse through a cracked door. The smell of oil and burned metal filled the air. The building was silent except for the slow creak of chains hanging from the ceiling. Lyra's hand brushed against one of them and the faint sound made her flinch. Relax, Chiron whispered. No one's here, Eli scanned the room. Someone was, recently. Before they could ask what he meant, a noise came from the far side. A faint metallic clang followed by footsteps. 3 figures emerged from the shadows, all armed with plasma rifles. Their armor was patched and old, but their eyes were sharp. Smugglers. The tallest one, a reptilian alien with scars down his jaw, stepped forward. You're a little far from the safe zones, aren't you? Chiron raised his hand slowly. We're looking for transport. We can pay. The smuggler's gaze shifted to Eli. His tone changed. A human. I thought your kind were dead. Lyra stepped forward quickly. He's not for sale. We just need a way out of the city. The smuggler chuckled. Everything's for sale. Eli's eyes stayed cold. And what's your price? The smuggler grinned. For you? Enough to retire forever. The council pays well for humans. Before he could reach for his weapon, Eli moved. He stepped forward so fast that the others barely saw him. In one motion, he grabbed the smuggler's rifle, twisted it away, and pushed him back into the wall. The weapon clattered to the floor. Chiron shouted, "Don't kill him!" Eli held the smuggler still, his voice steady. We don't need enemies. We just need time. The smuggler froze, fear flickering in his eyes. The council's already looking for you. They sent ships toward the docks. If you want time, you don't have much. Lyra's breath caught. Then we have to move now. Eli released the smuggler and turned toward the far door. Which way to the launch pad? The smuggler hesitated, then pointed down a corridor lined with flickering lights. Follow the freight path. The last transport ship is still fueling. You might make it if you're lucky. They ran through the corridor, the sound of engines growing louder with each step. The ground shook as the docking bay came into view. A massive freighter stood ready, surrounded by fuel tanks and crates. Workers shouted orders while drones loaded supplies. Chiron grinned. We can make it. But luck didn't last long. Above them, the sky split open with red light as the patrol ships descended. Explosions ripped through the air. The freighter's alarms blared. The ship's engines roared as it lifted off, leaving them behind. Lyra covered her ears as debris rained down. They're sealing the exits. Eli grabbed her hand and pulled her toward a side tunnel. This way! They sprinted into the darkness as the blast doors slammed shut behind them. The tunnel shook with the force of the explosions, dust falling from the ceiling. Chiron coughed as he tried to keep up. We lost our only way out. Eli stopped near a junction, his face lit by the faint glow of the scanner. Not the only one. There's an old mining shaft under this sector. It connects to the outer ridges, Lyra frowned. That's suicide. Those tunnels collapse all the time. Eli met her gaze. Would you rather wait here for them to find us? She hesitated, then nodded. Lead the way. They climbed down through a broken vent into the shaft below. The air grew colder, the sound of distant engines fading into silence. Their lights flickered against ancient walls carved with strange symbols from forgotten times. Chiron whispered, What is this place? Eli touched one of the carvings. Before your people built cities here, humans mined this planet. These are our marks. Lyra stared at the symbols glowing faintly under his touch. Then maybe this is where you were meant to come back. Eli looked ahead, his expression unreadable. Maybe. Or maybe it's where it all ends. They kept moving, their shadows stretching long across the walls. Above them, the city burned and the hunters searched the skies. Below, in the cold, dark tunnels, the three fugitives vanished deeper into the unknown, chased not just by soldiers, but by fate itself. The tunnels stretched endlessly beneath Vereen Prime, a maze of stone and steel echoing with every step they took. The air was cold and heavy, thick with dust that clung to their lungs. Dim lights flickered along the walls, powered by long-forgotten generators. Each sound felt louder here, their footsteps, the hum of Eli's faint pulse beacon, the distant groan of collapsing rock. Lyra followed closely behind Eli, her heart racing with every turn. The deeper they went, the less the city above seemed real. It was as if they had stepped into another world, one built on the bones of the old. Chiron trailed behind, his scanner glowing faintly, his voice low. The signal's weak down here. We're out of range for the patrols. For now. Eli slowed, studying the walls. This place wasn't just for mining. It was used for something else, storage, maybe experiments. Lyra looked around uneasy. You mean human experiments? He nodded slightly. During the final years of the war, humans built bunkers like this on every colonized world. We hid knowledge, technology, and sometimes people. Chiron frowned. So you're saying this tunnel might lead to more of you? Eli's eyes darkened. Or to what destroyed us? A low tremor shook the floor beneath them. Dust rained from the ceiling as a deep roar echoed through the tunnel. Lyra grabbed Eli's arm. What was that? Drills, he said quickly. They're scanning the ground. The council's using seismic sensors to track movement. They know we're underground. Chiron cursed under his breath. We need to keep moving. If they collapse the tunnels, we're done. They ran through narrow passages, weaving between broken supports and old machinery. The air grew hotter as they descended deeper. The faint glow of red emergency lights began to flicker along the walls, as if something in the bunker had awakened. Lyra's voice trembled. Eli, how do you even know where to go? He stopped and looked back at her. I don't. I'm following instinct. These structures were built with human logic. I can feel the pattern. There's always a way out. She stared at him, trying to understand. Even in the dim light, he seemed more than human, as if something inside him connected to the old machines. They reached a large chamber lined with rusted consoles and glowing screens covered in dust. In the center stood a massive cylindrical device humming faintly with power. The sight made Chiron's eyes widen. This thing's still running? It must be centuries old. Eli stepped closer, placing his hand on the console. It's a reactor. Old human core tech. If I can reroute its power, I might be able to overload the scanners above us and create a blackout. Lyra shook her head. That's too risky. What if it explodes? Eli smiled faintly. Then at least they won't find you. Chiron turned sharply. No, you can't do this alone. Eli's tone grew quiet. It's my fault you're running. My fight, not yours. Lyra stepped closer, her eyes fierce. You're wrong. You didn't bring this on us. You just showed us what they've been hiding. You showed us what humans really are. For the first time, Eli's expression softened. And what is that? Alive, she said simply. He looked away, his jaw tightening. Then let's make sure we stay that way. He began working quickly, connecting wires and rerouting energy through the old machine. The hum grew louder, filling the chamber with vibrations. The walls pulsed with light. Chiron monitored the readings, his voice tense. The energy's spiking. You've got seconds before it burns out. Eli glanced at him. Then get them ready to run. Lyra's heart pounded. What about you? He didn't answer. He kept his hand on the console, his veins glowing faint blue as the system responded to him. Sparks flew, lighting the room in flashes of white. Chiron grabbed Lyra's hand. We have to go. Lyra hesitated, tears burning in her eyes. Eli, come with us. He turned his head slightly, his voice calm but full of meaning. I'll find you. The next second, the core overloaded. A wave of light burst through the tunnels, shaking the ground. Lyra and Chiron were thrown back as the walls cracked around them. They scrambled to their feet, running toward the exit as the roar of collapsing metal echoed behind them. When they reached the surface, the city skyline burned under the morning sun. The scanners were gone. The patrols had vanished. The blackout had worked, but Eli was nowhere to be seen. Lyra fell to her knees, staring at the rising smoke from the ground below. He stayed behind, she whispered. Chiron placed a hand on her shoulder. He saved us. She wiped her eyes, her voice breaking but strong. Then we'll find him, no matter what it takes. Far beneath the ruins, in the flickering light of the dying reactor, a faint heartbeat pulsed through the silence. Eli's eyes opened slowly, glowing with a dim blue light. The human had survived, and his story was far from over. The sun rose slowly over the scarred skyline of Vereen Prime. The once silent city was now filled with whispers of fear and rumor. Everyone spoke of the blackout that shut down the entire sector, of the shockwave that tore through the ground, and of a strange signal that pulsed from beneath the ruins. Some said it was a power surge. Others swore it was the heartbeat of something waking up. Lyra stood at the edge of the old industrial ridge, the wind tugging at her hair, her eyes fixed on the crater below. The explosion from the underground bunker had destroyed everything for miles, yet she couldn't stop hoping. Chiron was beside her, his arm still bandaged, his face pale from exhaustion. Weeks had passed since the collapse, but neither of them could forget. You should rest, Chiron said softly. He's gone, Lyra. The council declared him dead. They're calling him a ghost from Earth. Lyra didn't move. Her voice was quiet but steady. He's not gone. I can feel it. He promised he'd find us. Chiron sighed, glancing up at the sky where patrol ships still circled like vultures. The council doubled security after the blackout. They think someone used human tech to cause it. They're afraid. Lyra turned toward him. They should be. That night the air changed. The wind carried a deep vibration, a sound that didn't belong to the machines. Across the city, lights flickered again, but this time it wasn't failure. It was awakening. Ancient frequencies rippled through the power lines, and communication towers began to transmit strange signals written in old human code. The council chambers erupted in panic. In the lower sectors, workers saw the first sign. A beam of blue light shot out from the ground near the crater, straight into the sky. The people who witnessed it stepped back in awe as the dust cleared, and through the haze a figure began to rise. Eli emerged from the heart of the crater. His clothes were burned, his body marked with faint scars that glowed blue under the morning sun. But he was alive. The energy from the old reactor had fused with the nanotech in his blood, rebuilding him from the edge of death. He looked up at the sky, eyes glowing with calm determination. He whispered to the wind, "It's time." As the day broke, council forces surrounded the area. Drones hovered above, scanning for life. When Eli stepped forward, their alarms blared. The soldiers shouted commands, but before they could fire, their weapons powered down on their own. The energy around Eli shimmered, bending the air itself. Machines that had once hunted him now recognized him as part of their code. From the ridge, Lyra saw the light and felt her heart stop. She grabbed Chiron's arm, her voice breaking. "It's him." Chiron stared in disbelief. "That's impossible." But Lyra was already running. She raced down the slope toward the crater, her feet slipping on the broken stone. The closer she got, the stronger the pull in her chest became. Eli stood waiting, surrounded by flickering energy fields. When she reached him, the light softened. He smiled faintly. "I told you I'd find you." Lyra stopped a few feet away, her eyes wide. "You shouldn't be alive." Eli shook his head. "I shouldn't, but the old tech changed me. The reactor was built to preserve life, not end it. The Council tried to erase what humans were, but the code still remembers." Chiron joined them, staring at the glowing marks on Eli's skin. "You're not just human anymore, are you?" Eli looked toward the sky where the patrol ships circled nervously. "I'm what they feared most. A human who remembers mercy." The sound of engines roared above as a fleet of massive ships entered orbit. They weren't Council ships. Their markings were old, their shapes unfamiliar, ancient human designs. The transmissions flooded every channel with a single message: "We have returned." The Council's towers flickered, their systems overloaded by the incoming data streams. Across the city, citizens watched the sky as the first of the ships descended. Eli raised his hand slightly and the light around him pulsed in rhythm with the ships above. Lyra whispered, "You called them." Eli nodded. "Not to fight, to end what we started." The ground trembled as the human fleet stabilized above the capital. The Council broadcasted demands for surrender, but no reply came. Instead, a clear voice echoed across every communicator. Eli's voice calm and steady. "To the people of Vereen Prime, humanity does not seek war. We seek balance. We seek peace." The message spread through every home, every station, every outpost. The war that had divided the stars for centuries was suddenly quiet. Lyra stepped closer to him, her voice soft. "What happens now?" Eli turned to her, his expression peaceful. "Now we build something better." Chiron looked up at the sky where light filled the horizon. "And if the Council refuses?" Eli's eyes hardened slightly. "Then they'll remember why they once feared humans." The wind picked up again, carrying the scent of ash and hope. Lyra looked at the man who had changed everything, the human who survived when no one else could. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel afraid of the stars above. As the light of the new dawn spread over Vereen Prime, Eli stood tall beside her. The last human was no longer a prisoner or a myth. He was a reminder of what courage could become when the universe tried to erase it. And this time, humanity had truly returned, not to conquer, but to lead the stars into a new beginning.